Hello, my name is Oluwatimi Ocean. I want to read the text from the emergency evaluation petition and rebuttal, right? So, the fabricated and perjured emergency evaluation petition by Jide Iwarere, which ostensibly brought cops to falsely imprison me and assault me. It left permanent stitches on my head, permanent scarring from the stitches because I was shot with a taser dart. um, this whole thing was staged, and it's called a swatting. So it was a false emergency petition. It was a fabrication. I was not going through any mental health crisis. Jide Wari had come to assault me. I understand that apparently many Nigerians, many Africans, uh, they file false emergency petitions. In fact, one of Jide Wari's friends, he doesn't have friends except this one person whose life was like destroyed, and I guess maybe that was God, punishing him for what he did to his own kids. Apparently, this family, they had filed an emergency petition on one of their sons. They'd locked him up when he was a kid in a psychiatric hospital. This boy ended up going to juvenile. He stayed in the Iwarere's home, this boy. The boy attempted, that was what Iwarere said, that he attempted to kill their mom. Their mom eventually died. The siblings, the kids, one died of a heart attack. Well, they went crazy. They were living, became homeless and things like that. The father was a professor like Jide Wari, intelligent man, but unfortunately, they used emergency evaluation petition on their kids, and it destroyed their family. Their entire family, destroyed their entire family. Apparently, I would learn that Nigerians abuse emergency evaluation petitions against their children. They file fraudulent, fabricated emergency evaluation petitions, especially Ethiopians. So it's kind of interesting that Jide Wari came and assaulted me with two Ethiopians. One of them would file a fabricated peace order. Jide Wari had been entering my building somehow. I don't know how, but his wife had already told me that they had Ethiopian friends who lived in the building, right? So that was why he came with Ethiopians to assault me. And I learned that Ethiopians abuse emergency evaluation petitions against their families a lot, because many Africans, they still use corporal punishment. They can, use a switch on their kids, but in America you can't do that. The parents will go to prison. So what many parents do is they file. I mean, evil, wicked parents, right? Like Jide Wari. Jide Wari is not my parents, but the wicked people who file false emergency evaluation petitions and call their children crazy, so that in case they want to report their parents, they just say they're delusional, and they lock them up in psychiatric hospitals, and they allow their parents to start giving them medication. Right? Terrible, very terrible. But I'm just going to get to it and read from the petition. Um, so let me start with, so the petition has um, an oath and warns, the court warns the petitioner, right, in script, right, in text, that the petition is sworn under penalty of perjury. So I'm going to read it here. To the petitioner, you may be required to appear before the court. You have made the statement above under penalties of perjury. If an evaluation is ordered, it would be helpful if you could accompany the evaluee to the emergency facility and provide emergency facility authorities with all information that is pertinent to this petition. Um, right, a petitioner who, in good faith, right, just because you see that it's done under penalty of perjury. Perjury, you can go do 10 years in the state of Maryland. If you're convicted of perjury, you could do 10 years in prison. Um, it says if a petitioner who, in good faith and with reasonable grounds, submits or completes the petition for emergency evaluation is not civilly or criminally liable for submitting or completing the petition in good faith, right? Jide Iwarere, I have evidence he didn't do it in good faith, and from audio recordings of our conversation, right, he never discusses the things that he mentioned here, right? He fabricated all of this. Nobody else, again, something, although mental health mental illness can be something that's subjective, but there's certain things that are objective. If somebody has schizophrenia, it's not just one person or one time that you'll observe it. There'll be many other people who see the Jekyll and Hyde thing in them. If somebody hallucinates, he'll hallucinate again, right? It's observable, it's repeatable, it will be repeated. Other people will observe it. And it's verifiable. So all these things Jide Iwarere wrote here on this one day of a middle-aged man that had no prior history of hospitalization, and since then it has not been repeated. And all state psychiatrists, even though I never gave consent, all state psychiatrists that maybe would have been on side of the state, right, or try and make money, they've said no, Jide Iwarere lied. That I have no mental illness. There's no evidence that I've ever hallucinated. They've never seen it. In fact, they said Jide Iwarere was lying. They outright told me I have a lawsuit against Jide Iwarere. The police, they've said it, but they're now just trying to cover up for the police. So let me get into it and try and keep this video quickly. So the petition was made at the District Court of Maryland for Montgomery County, located at 191 East Jefferson Street, Rockville, in the matter of Olurotimi Osha, petition for emergency evaluation, right? The petitioner is Lawson Jide Iwarere. I don't know how he got the name Lawson, but anyway, that's the name of the petitioner. So the case is actually Jide Iwarere versus Olurotimi Osha. So the name Olurotimi Osha, name of person to be evaluated, right? Petitioner address, his address is 2460 Sun Valley Circle. Cell phone is here. 240, blah, blah, blah. If the petitioner is a physician, a psychologist, blah, 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 okay, the evaluee, right? Okay, relationship to or interest, right? So a physician can do it, a psychologist or family member, right? So he's claiming he's my family member. Somebody who you fight with cannot petition you. Somebody you're in a dispute with, right? They can't petition you. By the way, there are requirements. Somebody who has a financial interest cannot use an emergency evaluation petition on you. That's the law in Maryland. So Jide Iwarere had a financial interest, even though we're not related. So I had told him that I was using him as a placeholder, as a beneficiary for a life insurance policy that the Navy took out of me, $300,000, because the Navy doesn't want us to use addresses of people in foreign addresses. My family are all in Africa, in Nigeria, in England. My mom would be my beneficiary. My mom is in Nigeria, right? My mom's in Nigeria. Jide Iwarere would never be my beneficiary, right? But I used his name because I provided his name as an emergency contact. The idea, because I don't suffer emergencies, so I'm not gonna die. I don't even believe in life insurance policies. By the way, I would never take out one. So, but it's just one thing that's something the Navy automatically does. So there's probably some kind of life insurance scam going on as well. Jide Iwarere, so if I had been killed, the Navy would have paid Jide Iwarere $300,000. So that's another thing that makes the petition completely invalid, right? Because Jide Iwarere had a financial interest because of that life insurance policy, right? So, and I know that's another way I know it was the Navy that induced him to do it, because it was only his name, it was his name that I provided to them, right? And so they contacted him when they were doing a new clearance on me. They kept calling me and asking me about him. So they wanted to clarify on how to inveigle or how to finesse him to file this fraudulent emergency petition, or how to use him, right, to obstruct justice. Because I had a case against them for discrimination, sexual harassment, which the Auditor General asked me to file. But the Auditor General, whom I introduced to Jide Iwarere, she was now contacting Jide Iwarere's daughter. So the Auditor General, she's in the habit of doing this, right? She probably is a bit crazy. That's what they say of her in the Navy. I don't know why they made somebody who they say is crazy. That's Don Jed Gilmore, Auditor General of the Navy, right? Maybe it's to be able to do continue with the illegal things that they do in the Navy, right? She's too crazy to to catch on, right? That's what they said in the Navy. And she has a history. There was a time she pretended to be, um, she she once entrapped a black American physician. This was a long time ago. I saw a case against her. She was posing as she was working for the Inspector General's office, postal office or something. And she and another guy, they pretended to be married, that they wanted to do some kind of vehicle insurance or injury insurance scam or whatever. And they entrapped a physician, a black physician who was not into doing this before, but he did it maybe to help black people, and he got imprisoned for it. So that's the Auditor General of the Navy. That's a sort of sneaky person, devious person she really is, right? So let me get into it. Evaluate relationship to or interest in evaluate. Uncle. Jide Iwarere is not my uncle. My mom has since provided I'll read her her own affidavit sworn at a high court in Nigeria. Jide Iwarere is not my uncle. He's not my mother's brother. He's not my mother's cousin. There's no relationship of my mom, no consanguinity. They're not even from the same village. He's not my father's brother or my father's cousin. They're not even from the same village. No relationship at all. So he lied. That's the first lie. Uncle. He claims he was my uncle. He's not my uncle, right? Evaluate address. So he wrote my address, 2301 Avenue, Glen Island Avenue, apartment number 503. And this is important because in the documents the police now gave to the Suburban Hospital for intake, Suburban Hospital wrote that I had no known address, wrote that I was homeless, that I was not able to take care of myself, even though I was removed by the police naked from my own apartment, right? But just so they could fabricate, they could use a ruse to commit me, right? That was why they wrote that I was homeless, that I couldn't take care of myself, even though I had money in my bank account, over 5 grand, right? In cash, I had lines of credit, I had an income, I had a new position. I read the offer letter as well, right? But they fabricated all of this. This is my address. He wrote my address here, but they wrote that I had no address, that I was homeless. That was what the police reported to Suburban Hospital. So the police was fabricating reports. Um, these are all civil rights, constitutional right violations, and fraud, outright fraud. It's actually criminal. Evaluate, right? I read date of birth. Don't know. So he's filling this out for the Judge Berry. Don't know. He doesn't know my date of birth, but he's saying he's my uncle. And Judge Berry is not questioning. But of course, as the police said, Judge Berry knows Jide Iwarere very well. They're close. Or maybe he also exchanged money, right? They exchanged money. She got money on the side. This was on a Sunday. You can't trace it to her. She received some money on a Sunday, right? Either way, I'm an auditor, right? And so I know how these things go down. I studied it as well, training. So um, describes me as sex male, race black, no height, no weight, hair black, eyes brown, complexion dark, other any. Now, so it asks that what is the name of spouse, child, parent, or other relative or other individual interested in the evaluee? That's the opportunity to put an interested party. My mother's alive. He wrote any. So intentionally, that was malicious. So you can see he did it in bad faith, not in good faith. Because an emergency evaluation petition for mental illness, it's something your family should be interested in. Somebody had never been hospitalized, and you can see it right here. The evaluee has been hospitalized in the past at the following facilities. Any. So none. I've never been hospitalized. Diagnosis, any. So no diagnosis. I had no prior diagnosis for mental illness. The evaluee currently is receiving psychiatric treatment for any. None. All of this, none. The evaluee has been prescribed the following medication for their mental disorder. None. So no indication of a mental illness, right? He intentionally left the age blank, right? Don't know, so that, because if it's a middle-aged person, maybe the judge would think more right? And say, well, at his age, he can't suddenly develop a mental illness like that, short of having gone to war or something like that. If he hasn't gone to war and suffered PTSD or had a severe accident, he can't just be in his home and develop a mental illness, right? It's probably something else. So, a petition for the evaluation of the evaluee was filed previously on any, none, never, right? Never, any, all of these things. So I didn't meet the requirements. Then suddenly he goes, okay, the evaluee is demonstrating the following behavior that leads me to conclude that they currently have a mental disorder. So this is what Jide Iwarere said, right? Um, by the way, he spoke with me in the hospital and he said, because when I was stunned when he told me that he was the one who filed this, he said he didn't know if I had a mental illness or not. So he didn't believe that I had a mental illness. He said the reason he did it is because he wants a psychiatrist to see if I do have a mental illness or not. So that's not what the purpose or the objective of the emergency petition is for. And that was because I dropped the phone on him and I had reported him to my mom that, you know what, his wife went missing, right? His wife went missing. He didn't tell anybody, right? His wife is my mother's half sister, right? But they're estranged because of the same man, right? She's my mother's illegitimate half sister. That doesn't make him my uncle, right? Because we come from a patriarchal society. She's illegitimate. It's my mother's side. I'm my father's son. And because she's illegitimate, right? She's an illegitimate half sister. They have no, it's like there's no relationship, right? Can't even call them an in-law. We can't call Jide Iwarere an in-law because so they hid that illegitimacy. It was out of annoyance, anger that I just learned of this when I was in America because they hid it. Because she was using my mom's last name, but they're estranged. They since cut off. They don't talk. They haven't talked in about 40 years, right? But I'm a friendly person, and that's why I sort of try to get close, because I'm a peacemaker, right? Try to pacify, things. Um, so this is what he wrote. That he wrote that disillusioned, paranoid of incoherent thought, and hallucinating. Right? That's what he wrote. That he's disillusioned, paranoid of incoherent thought, and hallucinating. Now, those are things that if you use weed, especially since I'm in my home, I don't smoke weed or take drugs, but today people who use weed who take drugs that's not a mental illness. Those are conditions that drugs right uh, would induce, right? But I don't take drugs, and by the way, all of this is a lie. If it happened, right, others would see it. There's no reason for me to have been disillusioned. I was in a relationship with someone. I had money in the bank. I had my businesses. I was getting ready to travel home. I had just gotten a job that doubled my income. What was I disillusioned for? That's a lie. Anyway, in any event, the doctors, hospitals have since said, no, this was a lie. That it was a uh, Jide Iwarere lied. It was a fabrication. They don't see what he's talking about. Um, the evaluee presents a danger to the life and safety of the evaluee or others because he wrote he's acting irrationally, right? Then it goes, see police reports number 2300230099 as verified by Sergeant Drangwitz, who came to mediate altercation with his neighbors. So this he outright lied. I was the one who called Sergeant Drangwitz because he and Jide Iwarere and my neighbor assaulted me. So this was a outright fabrication. Um, and then he signs May 13. You see, he signs different dates. He wrote May 13, 2023. Lawson Jide Iwarere, right? This is May 13, the first page, right? So it looks like he was doing it, maybe he was doing it over a few days. The next page, he signs it as May 14. May 14, he scratches out, it's May 13 and he scratches it out as May 14. So it's unclear. He writes May 14 on the third page. And the Judge Bibi M, approves it May 14, 2023, right? So it's unclear what he's really doing now. Then he goes, the evaluee informed me that he probably lost his job as an auditor in civilian employee at the Navy, but later doubted if termination is authentic, right? About 2 weeks ago. This was 2 weeks ago, right? That's what he's claiming. Since then, he had been troubled. On Wednesday, right? That's 5/11 Wednesday. He writes two different dates. He first writes 5/11. He scratches it off, then writes 5/14/2023. So he doesn't even have his dates right, right? He doesn't even have his dates right. He writes Wednesday is 5/14. Wednesday, the previous Wednesday was not 5/14. 5/14 was supposed to be the date he was actually signing this stuff, right? On Wednesday, he writes 5/14/2023, right? The day he was signing this, that it was approved, was 5/14, May 14, 2023. On Wednesday, a federal express letter addressed to him was delivered to my address. May 14, 2023 was Sunday, not Wednesday. I informed him, by the way, he's writing like a 12-year-old. This is a professor writing at Howard University, writing like a 12-year-old. I informed him immediately, but he didn't see the urgency to pick it up. So I took it to him. When he was still reluctant to accept by not coming out to meet me, I dropped it at his door. As I was leaving, he came out and shouted abuses at me, stating I was in violation of his command and for entering a government territory for which I was not permitted. His paranoia and statements were, that's a fabrication, right? His paranoia and statements were clearly contradictory to his ordinary demeanor, right? Since then, he had made incoherent phone calls and texts to me at different times of the day. Hence, I requested the Crisis Center in Rockville to assist in evaluating him today. They went to his apartment about 10 a.m. and, based on their interaction with him, concluded that an emergency evaluation would be helpful. Shortly after, his neighbor called the police due to his unruly behavior. Sergeant Drangwitz mediated the altercation. See police report number 2300-23099. By the way, this Sergeant Drangwitz, I filed a misconduct complaint against him. He's retired. He's since retired from the department. I reported him to his boss, and they asked me to go and report him. And we filed, so the complaints that had been filed against him, right? So all of this was fabricated, right? And he keeps referring to the police report 2300-23099. Concerning the incident with the police today, May 14, 2023. Police Sergeant Drangwitz informed me that he was called in by the evaluee's neighbors because he came out of his apartment and harassed one of his neighbors and seized his telephone, hence their call to the police. He said he managed to restore order but continues to be concerned about the safety of his neighbors. See police reports. Again, he keeps saying, see police report. 2300-23099 for details. They've never shown me that police report. They hid it, but I'm going to obtain it. Continued. Furthermore, in his random phone calls to me, he said my wife was dead. All a fabrication, right? On May 15, if I said his wife was dead or thought his wife was dead, why did I buy honey, African honey, and lemon drops and take it to her on May 15, the next day after he had assaulted me, right? When I went to deliver his letter, he said I could be shot, right? Okay. Another fabrication. So he emphasized that, okay, him saying that he said I could be shot, that he potentially said this, but that's not the same as saying I will shoot him, right? So that's when so he was talking like an infant, like a child, right? When he says this, the reader is expecting that he means that I'll shoot him, which I never said, right? But he's saying that's not what he meant. So you can see he was using deception, right? He was using specious language, right? And you could see those were signs. Anybody could see that, okay, this guy has dementia, right? Right away at the hospital, the first place I was taken to, they said he has dementia, but he's in denial because you can see the crap he's writing. Everything is a fabrication, right? You wouldn't expect. Um, he repeated this statement over the phone at another time. I suspect that these are part of his paranoia, as he has never done or said anything like that before. So he's repeating this paranoia thing, right? Paranoia. By the way, paranoia means belief, uh, in things that are not factual, right? So he's using this term paranoia, fear of what's not factual. He hasn't indicated any fear. That's not paranoia, right? That's not what he's describing is not paranoia, right? It's maybe describing some kind of rage, but not paranoia. By the way, I never demonstrated any of these things. I can't shoot him because I don't own a gun, right? I don't own a gun. I've never owned a gun. Okay, so that's it. That was what he wrote, and Judge Bibi signed it. Finds probable cause to believe that the named individual evaluee has shown the symptoms of a mental disorder from that description and presents a danger to the life or safety of the evaluee or others, and therefore orders that any peace officer take into custody and transport the evaluee to the nearest emergency facility for examination by a physician within 6 hours after arrival at the emergency facility, and if in the physician's opinion necessary for emergency care and treatment, provided that the emergency facility may not keep the evaluee for more than 30 hours under his order, but is under this order, but is not precluded from voluntary or involuntary admission in accordance with Maryland Code Health General article May 14, 2023, BBM Berry. So that irrational screed that he wrote, incoherent screed, full of errors, right? He's writing that the day he wrote this was Sunday, May 14, 2023. And he said, I got a letter on Wednesday, May 14, 2023, right? Full of errors, incoherent. And this is what she approved and said, well, this person, he didn't state a threat, right? Jide Iwarere emphasized on the phone that no, that him saying that my God, he was even saying, oh, I said may, I said may get shot, and that I didn't say he didn't say that I was the one who would shoot him. He later said in a conversation, he said no, that what he said I said was that the Navy will shoot him. Right, so that's not me. Then they should go and look for the Navy officer that would shoot him. That's on me. But all of this is fantastic because again, it was an this was an ex parte order because they didn't call me and ask me. I didn't stand before the judge and say, well, Jide Iwarere is lying. So they violated my constitutional rights. I'll continue and read the other portions I contend. But let me quickly read from my friend. So my friend Sharon Caruth, because he lied about this neighbor that he came with, about how I attacked the neighbor. My friend wrote this. She wrote under oath. She wrote and she reported this. She told the state attorney's office on May 14. This is from my friend who spoke with the police on May 14, 2023, at around 11:15 a.m. Now, all that stuff he was writing about the crisis team coming to see me at 10 a.m., it was a fabrication, it was a lie. On May 14, 2023, at around 11:15 a.m., a call came into my home Olu said that his Ethiopian neighbor had assaulted him in some way over a mobile phone dispute, and I told him to call the police. Olu called me again when the police officer arrived. So you see, I was the one who called the police. The policeman asked me who I was. I explained that I've known Olu Osha since 2004. I attended his wedding as well as his graduation from law school. I then asked the officer what was going on. He disclosed that he had been called about a disturbance on the floor of the unit in which Olu lived. I then asked, so it was in my own apartment, right? In my own apartment. I then asked the officer what was going on. He disclosed that there had been he had been called. I then asked the officer if he needed anything else from me. He said that he did not. The call ended. The entire exchange lasted fewer than 10 minutes. She signed her name. So you see, I had a witness that refutes what Jide Iwarere wrote and what the police officer wrote, right? Um, on May 17, after I'd been assaulted, May 16, I'd been assaulted, then May 17, um, I was given this guy, the Gurmashumi, the neighbor that came with Jide Iwarere, went to file a fraudulent peace order. I was never charged, and I'll read the fabrications that person wrote. My name is Olurotimi Osha. I want to keep this shorter. I'll keep you posted. Thank you.